What is the greatest unsolved mystery of all time? Disappearance of Asha Degree. In 2000, 9-year-old girl that packed a bag in the middle of a storm and was last seen walking down a highway. A driver approached her to help and she ran into the woods and was never seen again. Nothing suggests why she would run away. Her book bag was found a year later. Most likely she was abducted while walking, but why did she leave her house in the middle of a raging storm? I love unsolved mysteries, but one that always gets me is the murder of Missy Bevers. She was killed in the early morning at a church that she taught yoga at. Security footage from the church showed the murderer roaming the halls of the church all night, but that's not what's weird. What's weird is that the murderer was dressed head to toe in police riot gear. It is the weirdest and eeriest video footage and is just unsettling. There's lots of theories, but her murder has never been solved, and I believe there hasn't even been a real suspect in the case. The disappearance of the Springfield Three is a top contender for me. Long story short, in the early morning hours of June 7, 1992, these three women, Cheryl Levitt, 47, her daughter Suzanne Susie Streeter, 19, and Susie's friend Stacy McCall, 18, all vanished from Cheryl and Susie's home following a night of fun and partying, as it was the girls' high school graduation. All their personal belongings, their cars, purses, and even the little dog was left behind. There were no signs of a struggle or foul play. However, the front porch light's glass globe was broken and not swept up, and there was a weird message of the answering machine that accidentally got deleted. Yet, no trace of the three women has ever been found, and the case remains unsolved 30 years later. The aerial school landings in Zimbabwe. 60+ school children saw crafts landing and beings coming out of them. The kids interacted with the beings. They were put under evaluation by a Harvard psychiatrist. They all told virtually the same story and drew the same drawings. It was concluded that they were telling the truth. My favorite is the Chicago TV hijacking. During a Doctor Who rerun in 1987, somebody dressed as Max Headroom hijacked the TV signal for a minute and a half, during which he exposed his ass and got spanked by a woman and mocked Coca-Cola. FCC has been investigating for years and nobody has been charged. One I'm always fascinated with is, I believe in the mid-2000s, a student at Ohio State mysteriously disappeared, and to this day they have no idea what happened to him. Basically, he went out to a popular bar with friends. The security camera sees him walking into the bar, and this is the only entrance/exit, as the bar is in a larger building, but it never sees him leave the bar at the end of the night. His name was Brian Schaffer. It's an interesting story/mystery to take a look at. The Yuba County Five. One of the detectives interviewed at some point said, "Not a damn thing about this case makes any sense at all. 5 guys with minor disabilities go to a basketball game. They have their own very anticipated game to play in the next morning. One of the guys even laid out his uniform for the next day. They leave the game they were spectators for. On the drive home, they stopped to buy snacks. The wrappers were found in the car and the cashier remembered them. Then, instead of going home, they drive miles and miles out of their way to a national state park, leave their perfectly functioning and fueled car to wander unprepared into the snowy wilderness. A witness claims to have seen a second vehicle and perhaps a woman. A convenience store nearby claimed to have seen them the next day. But 3 of them are found dead in the woods, believed to have died from exposure. A 4th one is found in a trailer in the woods that had sufficient food and heat sources to survive for quite a while, having apparently starved to death and losing 200 pounds before succumbing to that and hypothermia. He had approximately 13 weeks of beard growth. The last man has never been found. So, firstly, why? And then why starve to death in the woods for weeks? If it was foul play, for what purpose? Their car wasn't stolen. There was no money to be gained. Even if it was some weird cult thing, none of them were apparently harmed. They all just died in the woods from staying in the woods. Edit. A lot of people are pointing out that the man who starved to death lacked common sense, and his disability might have led to him not wanting to eat stolen food. He was not alone in the trailer the entire time. After he died, someone wrapped his body and head in a way he could not have wrapped himself. His disability alone does not explain his starvation. At least 2 of them made it to the trailer, and some of the food was opened and eaten, but not enough to keep him from starving. Some of the food was stored in an outbuilding. It's just more likely that they didn't look hard enough to find it, more than the starvation. The problem is that they stayed somewhere in the woods for weeks instead of just walking down the road on any particular day the weather was better. The car belonged to Jack Madruga. He really did not like anyone else driving his vehicle, and he was not the one with schizophrenia. So while Gary Mathias absolutely could have initiated the whole event with an episode, he had been taking his meds and he was very unlikely to be at the wheel and just take the other 4 along for the ride. However, I understand it is possible that in the midst of an episode Gary pressured Jack into letting him drive. Their families knew their disabilities a whole hell of a lot better than you do, and their parents let them go to a basketball game together and were baffled at how this happened. I'm sure their disabilities played into how it happened, there's just layers of confusing details and contradictions. The mystery of Caspar Hauser, a youth found wandering Germany in 1828 wearing undersized clothes and no communication skills. After being educated, he claimed to have grown up in the total isolation of a darkened cell. Years later he died after being stabbed by a stranger who gave Caspar a cryptic note, but officials suspected he stabbed himself. Wikipedia. Who stole the 13 pieces of artwork from the Gardner Museum? Where are the paintings now? Where are the men who committed the heist? Gardner Museum heist, and BuzzFeed Unsolved did an episode on it. What was in the libraries of Castle Alamut that were destroyed? The castle was sieged and burned in the early Middle Ages by the Mongols, I believe in 1282 AD. They were a league of assassins founded by Hassan I Sabah, and the castle, Alamut, was their stronghold. They were involved in political murders and especially high-profile targets. There were said to be beautiful gardens at the castle. The library of the Assassin Order and the documents were burned during the fall of Alamut. What knowledge did they burn? What secrets did they have? What did the gardens look like, and were these gardens real? The Hashishins and Castle Alamut in Biographics episode. America's Lost Child, aka the Child in the Box. He was discovered in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on February 25, 1953, having a fresh haircut, nail trims, but had been severely beaten. Police ruled it off as a homicide, and the case is still open to find the murderer. The Adam case, where a little boy's torso was found in the River Thames. Investigators believe that he was trafficked from Nigeria to be murdered in a ritual sacrifice, but his body has never been formally identified. The WOW signal. A strong narrowband radio signal detected on August 15, 1977, by the Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope in the United States. I find the story of the Mary Celeste fascinating. For a more recent one, that Vegas mass shooter who was a perfectly contented millionaire with a happy life and just opened fire on people from a hotel room. WTF was that about? The Chicago Tylenol murders in 1982. Who would do such a thing and why? Was it one person acting alone? Did they do it at the distribution center, or did they go to different locations to tamper with the bottles? The disappearance of a 9-foot great white shark off the coast of Australia. In 2003, researchers tagged a 3-meter, 9-foot, female great white shark to measure water temperature and at what depth. However, the shark disappeared 4 months later. The tag was washed ashore, and the researchers found out that the shark dived to a depth of around 610 meters, 2,000 feet, where the temperature shot up from 7 degrees Celsius to 25 degrees Celsius, 46 degrees Fahrenheit to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. This caused them to believe that the shark was eaten and are now on the hunt for the creature. Case 2 is still very bizarre and a scary mystery. Basically, the story goes that a small boat about 10 meters long drifted near the Great Barrier Reef in 2007. 3 people were on board, they disappeared. The strange part was when the Coast Guard boarded it, they found no signs of distress. Food was on the table, laptop was on. Everything on the boat worked in perfect condition, but the crew were nowhere to be found. The consciousness. A child is conceived, and at some point, once the brain becomes complex enough, it starts to develop a feeling of self. It starts to perceive itself as the center of something, and everything else is outside. We naturally distinguish the I from the rest of the world. This is a light that goes on in the head at some point. In deep sleep, unter narcotics, or after injury, the light can flicker or go out. When we die, the thing that is me is gone forever. Or is it? Religion says it's not. It's a everyday mystery that gets more mysterious the more we think about it. I find this to be the most fascinating question there is. Where is the gravesite of Genghis Khan? This guy conquered most of the known world, including China, Persia, Russia, and the Asian steppes. But to this day his burial site is still not known. Who knows what kinds of riches he left behind in his tomb, and what significant discoveries can be made if it was ever found. So we think the universe was created at the Big Bang, where all of the universe's matter was focused in such a small point and at such a high temperature that it led to the formation of atoms. Our laws of physics, solid matter, etc. makes sense, but what always confuses me is how did that matter get into that point in the first place? Like, we know energy can't be created or destroyed, but it can't have just existed forever, right? Everything must have a beginning, yet this is sort of paradoxical because you can't make something out of nothing. Sure, Maybe the Big Bang happened due to the collapse of a previous universe or something. In that case, where did the previous universe come from? Keeps me up at night lol.